Philippines, poverty is one of the major problems in the country, with the poverty incidence estimated at 24.9% in the first semester of 2013, as reported by the Philippine Statistics Authority. On average, a Filipino family of 5 who lives within the poverty line must earn 5,600 pesos every month to meet their basic food needs and 8,000 pesos to meet both basic food and non-food needs. Some families are able to make ends meet, while some do not, and this is usually where child labor begins. In a survey conducted by Survey on Children, an estimated 5.5 million children aged 5 to 17 years were working as of 2011, with 58.4% or an estimated 3.21 million considered as child labor. 2.9 million have been identified as working in hazardous work environments, with 62% of these children working in the agricultural sector, 30.1% were in the services sector, and the rest, 7.6%, worked in the industry sector. Most employers take advantage of this because there are certain advantages in employing children rather than adults. Children can be hired and replaced at a fraction of adult wages. They do not join labor unions and very seldom complain. There have been many efforts from the government and social civic groups in eliminating child labor. However, the magnitude of the problem and the high demand for working children have made it impossible to eradicate as of today. What are the laws prohibiting child labor, and what is the government doing in implementing these? Why is there still a high demand for child labor when the law specifically prohibits this practice? How can child labor be stopped? Good evening. You're watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss the sensitive topic of child labor, what you need to know about child labor, and what you need to do to help stop it.
Our guests for tonight are Julius Cainglet, Assistant Vice President of the Research, Communication, Networking, and Project Development Federation of Free Workers, and Engineer Roland Pasis, Member of Board of Trustees, Visayan Forum.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Roland. Good evening, Julius.
Good evening,
Karen, thank you. As mentioned by Karen, it's a very sensitive topic. Personally, I'm appalled by what's happening.
And seeing the statistics that there are about 60% from the agricultural sector that uses child labor. I know, not 60%, but 60% of child labor is from the agricultural sector. Parang now I'm worried na when I'm eating in a restaurant or buying my food from the grocery, you don't know if it's a product of child labor.
Right? And it's also, obviously, it's not just here, but globally, it's an issue. So maybe we should start off by, I guess, defining what a child is in the legal sense. No, what a child is in reference to child labor. Maybe Roland, do you want to?
Yes, in the Philippines, a child is any person who is below 18 years old.
Okay.
Technically speaking, although some might question it that psychologically some older children are even at a younger psychological state. But for the purposes of the law, we can focus on this definition that anyone who is below 18 years old.
Is this based on Republic Act 7610, the Child Protection Law, or just generally?
It cuts across all laws. It's a blanket definition.
Yeah,
right, okay.
Actually, the Magna Carta on child labor is RA 9231, which amended certain portions of RA 7610 and 7658.
And that provides?
Which provides, among others, na yun nga, no, anyone below 18 years old is not supposed to work. No? So, a child involved in any activity that is economic in nature, that is considered child labor. No? However, there are exceptions. No? Alam naman natin, no, especially nung mga bata pa tayo, no, usong-uso yung mag-part-time ka sa mga fast food. No?
Yes.
So these are the type of work that is allowed. No? Yung 15 to below 18, they can work under certain conditions. No?
Okay, maybe you can clarify, Julius, kung ano yung mga conditions wherein someone below 18 or anong specific ages yung pwedeng i-employ at saka ano yung types of work that they're allowed to do even if they're below 18.
Yeah, so yung unang layer, yung 15 to 18, no? Kasi under Philippine laws, 15 is already working age, no? So pwede kang mag-engage in a type of work that would not endanger your life.
So this is
your
according to the
safety,
Department of Labor?
Yes,
The Department
according
of Labor,
to 9231. Yeah.
so allows 15-year-olds and above?
Yeah. Yung 15-year-old and above, kahit wala ng working permit kung tawagin yan, basta hindi naman nakaka-endanger sa buhay, sa kalusugan, tsaka sa morals ng bata din, they can work.
They can work. And do they have special rights under the law? Because napapansin ko, like, pag below 18, marami na rin, usually if you go mga interns or even yung mga, lalo na yung bloggers, mga below 18 lang yan eh. And I guess you can, do they have special rights under the law?
Well, ang sinasabi lang, kung ano yung tinatanggap ng hindi bata, dapat ganun din ang kanilang tanggapin. No? And then, ang mga limitations, halimbawa, pangunahin, syempre, 15 to 18, nag-aaral pa iyan, dapat sa lahat ng pagkakataon, kung siya nagtatrabaho, hindi nako-compromise yung kanyang right to education, siya pa rin ay nakapaglalaro, no? Siya ay malaya makapaglaro. No? Kaya nga ang tagline namin sa aming kampanya ay dapat maging batang malaya ang mga ito.
And kaninong responsibilidad yun? Na, to make sure, because if someone is already working, you'll just make them report to work, diba? So, is it the responsibility of the employer to make sure that they have time to go home, study, at may time din maglaro? How do you balance that if you're the employer?
Well, yes, ideally, you don't make the child work for more than 4 hours. Yun yung
4
pinakamaganda.
hours. That's less than the regular employees.
Yeah.
Now in the cases of where there's the parents basically allowed it, no? So in other words, by permission. No? Sometimes, in fact, the child laborer works for the parents. It's quite common. It's quite common you have a small sari-sari store or a food booth or something in the mall, and you make them work. No. So my question is twofold. One is if it's the parents themselves making them work in a small business, a family business. Secondly, kung may permission, for example, from the parent, may excuse slip. Parang yes, I will allow my child to work. Roland, you might want to clarify those questions.
I think the most important distinction that we have to make before even talking about this issue is to clarify between child labor and child work.
Okay. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. We have to start with that. Kasi yung child work...
child labor versus child work. Those are two different concepts.
These are two different concepts. These are worlds apart. Although, madali mag-slide ang isang bata from child work to child labor. And I will explain that.
Okay.
Kasi sa child work, ito yung nakikita natin. Halimbawa, yung sinasabi mo kanina na may expectation ng parents na tumulong, halimbawa magwalis-walis sa bahay, minsan magtumao doon sa tindahan.
Yeah.
And at some point, even in agriculture, tutulong doon sa work ng mga magulang kasi part of the training nga ito. Part na pagiging buhay Pilipino ay maging isang masunurin na bata at a certain age, you have to be prepared na maging productive person someday. No? So, mahirap din naman yata na lumaki yung mga bata, for example, from the point of view of the parent, na tamad siya or hindi siya marunong man lang maghugas ng pinggan. But it becomes child labor when there are certain rights that becomes endangered. One is the right from being exploited. No? Dapat ang bata hindi exploited pag nagtatrabaho. Hindi siya dapat binubugbog, hindi siya dapat pinipilit na magtrabaho or lalo na yung mga ibang bata, kinukulong ng mga ibang bata. Another right nga kaya sa katulad ng sinasabi ni Julius kanina is the right to education. No? Dapat ang bata, kahit na tumutulong sa family or even at some point doon sa industry ng parents, dapat yung education niya hindi nasasakripisyo. Dapat hindi siya magiging absent palagi or worse is magda-drop out siya sa school. No? And most importantly, the right to participate in groups that make them children. No? The right to play, the right to be part of a group. So these are basic rights na dapat nating isinasaisip. Pag tinitingnan natin yung bata na nagtatrabaho, no? If these rights will be sacrificed, then it becomes child labor. That's where we define the line na dapat hindi na natin.
So anyway, three E's, di ba? Education, right to education, right against being exploited, and right to, I guess, get, well, not the third E, but basically to have a group.
To develop, to participate, to develop.
To engage in a group. Yeah, to engage in a group.
Or to get excited.
Get excited, yeah, to get excited
to play, things,
all right.
things
Yes.
like that.
And what about instances wherein there are some parents that they really bring their kids to audition for commercials, for print ads,
Kasi
and these are
working yan.
kids, so that's definitely meron mga below 15. What specific guidelines are there in order to make sure that parents don't exploit the children or don't violate the laws against child labor?
Yan, yung sa 9231 dinedefine niya na there are certain types of work talaga na pwede sa mga batang below 15 and this involves media, no?
Modeling.
Ibang uri ng pagtatanghal na it is really necessary na bata ang gumampan, no? Halimbawa, mag-asawa si Daniel Padilla at saka si
Marian Rivera.
Si Marian Rivera.
Parang hindi naman sila kasi
different age.
Or may mga, there are a lot of stars na may mga anak na artista.
Alam naman na si Dagul yung gagampan na anak nila. So, imposible yun. So, in this case, they have to secure a permit from the Department of Labor and Employment that they will hire children for this purpose.
Even sa mga commercials,
and if you're a parent and you have, or even, diba, if you want yung mga parents who don't have kids in showbiz or print ad yet, and they want them to be part of that type of industry, what guidelines do they have to follow in order to make sure that they observe the laws?
Well, yun po, no, once they get hired as models or as actors, yun, unang-una, again, yung education, di dapat mako-compromise, no? And then when it comes to tapings and shootings, dapat hindi abutin ng gabi. No, yung kabuang taping at shooting time ng bata hanggang 4 na oras lamang.
Yes. I've had that experience. We had a commercial, we had a child. At a certain time, we had to pack up or parang we had to stop. Or dapat na shoot. Yung
by 8
priority yung
o'clock
shooting
By 8
sa kanya.
o'clock dapat hindi
8
na
PM.
kasama sa shooting.
Now, when it comes to exploitation, in a case like this, no, that Karen proposed, no, for example, and nagkataon naging successful tong child actress. Ito, Raisa May, di ba? Bilang, now, is it part of exploitation na, kunyari, I'm the parent, I want her to work, and all her earnings napupunta sa akin. I mean, yung exploitation ba na gano'n, na minomonitor ng, let's say, Department of Labor na should the child have a trust fund or
precisely, no, that's what the law provides, no. Kapag ka ang bata ay sumasahod, dapat nasa trust fund yung kanyang kinikita, no. Para pagdating niya sa takdang edad na pwede niya lang desisyonan paano gagastusin yung pera, tsaka lang pwedeng ilabas.
Okay.
Now, yung ibang mga magulang na magre-request sa anak na, anak, magbigay ka namang konti para sa gastusin ng pamilya. So hanggang 20% nung kinikita. At least sinalan. Pero beyond that, it's
okay. Now, go ahead.
Kanina, Julius mentioned yung mga layers ng mga pwedeng magtrabaho. And usually when we think of child, we just think talaga small children. But obviously, under the law, anyone below 18 is also a child. So I've come across like instances where the kasambahays are below 18 or mga houseboys, yung mga magugupit ng mga hardero, ganyan. Below 18 talaga. Ano ang guidelines dito to make sure that if you're hiring someone and you find out the real age, you don't violate the law?
Kasambahay, Roland. Baka gusto mong sagutin.
Yeah. Although palagi naman kaming nagkakatrabaho ni Julius sa kasambahay issue, we have to know that there's a new law about employing kasambahay. Ito yung tinatawag natin na batas kasambahay at kapapasa lang po ito last year, if I'm not mistaken. At kapapasa rin yung implementing rules middle of the year. At very specific itong batas na to na actually it allows employers to have kasambahays who are below 18 years old and above 15 years old. As long as...
Between 15 and 18? Okay.
15 to 18, so 16, 17, 18. As long as, number one, it's not hazardous. No? Hindi nasasakripisyo rin yung kalusugan, health, at saka, most importantly, yung psychological health ng kasambahay.
Yeah. In other words, kunyari, if I hired a 16-year-old na kasambahay, pero ginagamit ko siyang construction worker habang may construction na konti, sa bawal yun.
Bawal.
Okay, so dapat naglilinis.
Dapat hindi hazardous. What else?
hindi mo siya binubugbog,
Of
of course, walang sexual exploitation.
Of course, yeah.
And at one point in time, you have to ensure na kung gusto man ng bata ng kasambahay na mag-aral, you have to give that chance.
Do you have to also fund yung pag-aaral nila?
Actually, wala sa
rules naman.
Wala sa rules ito eh. Ang basic rule dito is kung gusto niya mag-aral, you have to help to allow her at of course you still give the support through the proper compensation para hindi naman na parang yung nangyayari kadalasan na hindi mo na sinaswelduhan kasi pinayagan mo na siya mag-aral.
Yeah.
I think that becomes
So you mean,
unacceptable.
kailangan, they will be allowed to work, but if they want to study, you give them time to go to school, pero hindi rin pwedeng, because pinapaaral kita, wala nang sweldo. Dapat.
Yung ibang binibigyan, yung pamasahin na nila mag-aaral, yun na yung parang pinakasweldo. And that's also not
Lugi naman yun.
Hindi mo pwedeng barter na parang, okay, wala kang sweldo, pero papaaralin kita.
No, you have to pay the basic salary na nakasaad sa batas.
Yeah, actually, the Batas Kasambay provides na dapat talaga pag-aralin. Kasi yun din naman sa saligang batas, yung batayang edukasyon, ng basic education ay karapatan ng lahat. No?
Only for 18 and below?
Lahat. Actually,
even
if we
19.
jump to the Batas Kasambay, kung hindi pa nakakakuha ng basic education beyond 18,
you have to,
kailangan pa rin. So it doesn't have to be Ateneo naman pag pinag-aral mo. Ang ating public school.
Pag-college na rin, ibang usapin na kasi yun.
Okay, sige.
Okay.
I still have other questions,
Madami,
lalo na
questions,
pagka-houseboy, baka hindi considered kasambahay. So, I'll ask you those, but for now, we'll have to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. Millions of children are victims of child labor. There is a fine line between a child doing household chores to help the family and doing manual labor that could deter their health, mental, and social well-being. Some children were promised that they would go to school in exchange of working as household help, which is the case of Kim.
Sobrang hirap ng buhay kasi walang hanap buhay yung pamilya ko. Mas gusto ko makasama yung lola ko kahit ganun sitwasyon namin. Pero yung time na yun po na gusto kong mag-aral, kaya pumayag po ako na sumama pupuntang Maynila. Yun, pinapasok niya po ako. Pero hindi po naging maganda kasi parang sa pilitan lang po na pagpasok. Kasi habang pumapasok po ako, uuwi ako ng bahay, may bugbog ako. Binubugbog po niya ako, ganyan. Ginagawa ko naman po yung mga mga tungkulin doon. Hindi po siya nagbibigay ng pera sa akin. Kahit po sa pera na pang baon ko. Yung pinakalas na bugbog niya is yung tambo, tumama sa mata ko. So lumaki po yung bukol. Yung pinakalas na employer ko na pang-apat. Yun na po yung yung namasukan na po ako sa kanya na totally all around na po talaga na may anak po siya na 4, inaalagaan ko. Tapos yun, sa bahay po ako. Lahat po yung ginagawa ko, walang parang pahinga. Kung gusto nila na mag-utos, uutusan ka nila. Tapos po, yung bilang bata nga po, hindi rin ako nakakapaglaro. As in, yung buhay ko dun sa Cebu na maglaro, wala dito sa Manila. Hindi ko naranasan.
While other minors were promised work as sales ladies, but were instead recruited to do household help, which is what happened to Ina.
Mahirap din po kasi kami, tapos wala na rin po yung nanay tsaka tatay ko. Kaya kailangan ko makapagtapos sa pag-aaral. Isang araw, may lumapit sa amin, nag-alok sa amin ng trabaho. Sinabihan niya kami na kung sa Maynila kayo magtatrabaho, malaki yung sahod niyo. Tapos sabi niya na kapag magtrabaho kayo sa akin, 2,500 yung sahod niyo. Tapos later on, madadagdagan pa yun kapag magtagal na kayo sa amin. Pagdating po sa Maynila, sinalubong po kami ng employer po namin sa airport. Tapos nun, pagdating doon, pinick up lang kami ng isang sasakyan. Mga minor de edad kami lahat doon. Ang mga pangako nilang sinabi sa amin ay kahit isa walang natupad kasi pagdating namin doon,
wala kaming sahod. Tapos, bawal pa kami makapag-usap sa mga tao. Bawal kami makapag-usap sa aming pamilya. Kinuha yung contact namin, kinuha yung cellphone namin. Bawal kami makapag-usap sa pamilya namin. Akala ko, pagdating ko dito sa Manila, makapag-aral ako, pero nabaliktad. Sana yung panahon, nasa yung oras. Tapos, naabuso pa kami. Simula nang napunta ako dito sa Visayan Forum, parang nabuhayan ako ng pag-asa na hindi pa pala huli ang lahat. Akala ko kasi hindi na kami makakatakas dun sa pinagtrabuhan namin. Akala ko hanggang dun lang. Pero may plano pala yung Panginoon.
Kim and Ina's stories are just some of the same predicaments faced by millions of children in the Philippines. With the help of organizations like the Visayan Forum, they are now presently finishing their schooling with the high hopes of a better future. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel with our guest, Julius Cainglet, Assistant Vice President of the Research, Communication, Networking and Project Development Federation of Free Workers, and Engineer Roland Pasis, member of the Board of Trustees of the Visayan Forum.
Yeah, no? We saw the case study of Kim and Ina. No? These are young ladies that are now under your care or under the care of the Visayan Forum, right, Roland?
Yes, Rod.
And it's heart-breaking and gut-wrenching. No? Yeah, it's very sad. In fact, this goes beyond legal for me.
And it's an eye-opener because
moral.
you don't know that this goes on pala. That they recruit people from outside Metro Manila, tas kung ano-ano yung pinapromise sa kanila, and then when they get here, they're just exploited. So I guess from here, we can talk of one, for people who are experiencing the same problems like Ina, and what can they do? Kanino rin-report yung mga ganitong types of violations?
Yes. Gusto ko lang sabihin na kahapon nakita ko itong si Ina and Kim. It was Mother's Day. So our founding member went there and I went with her. At these girls are fine. No? They're medyo masaya na sila, nasa summer break na sila. But behind their happy faces, there's a story that they told us. And what they told us two stories. Yung unang story is about a story of abuse as a domestic worker. Binugbog, pinilit na magtrabaho, tapos hindi pa binayaran. No? So, multiple yung abuse. At sabi nga niya, hindi pa nga sila pilalaro at saka walang pahinga. So, that is purely for me a condition of forced labor.
It's like slavery.
It's slavery. It's modern day slavery.
Not only slavery.
It is also slavery.
Not only slavery, but they were beating up. Kasi minsan slavery is just parang hard labor. Ito, they were just being beaten up.
Tinatamaan pa raw ng tambo sa mukha, di ba?
There's a crime there, a clear crime of physical abuse. No?
It's a crime against their being humans, being children and being girl children. No? So that's what we're fighting against. No? Yung second case, yung case ni Ina, it's a common example of trafficking. No? Yung trafficking kasi, yung andito yung panloloko, na mayroon kang recruitment agency o recruiter ka, tapos nangako ka ng matatamis na...
According to them, mataas daw yung sweldo,
2.5, no?
papaaralin.
Pero pagdating naman, it's nothing transpired.
It's just free labor lang.
It is purely taking advantage of the vulnerability of the children. No? Itong mga bata kasi na to, wala namang trabaho, hindi sila nag-aaral during that time. So when someone came to their province and recruited them, then naturally it's easy for them to say, yes, sasama ako sa Maynila. Maynila yan, may trabaho. Pagdating dito, actually yung pangako doon is a waiter, di ba? But when she came here, naging katulong kasambahay na siya. So that in itself ay panloloko na yan. So we have to understand these things because under our laws, there are many laws that are being used to punish these things. These are crimes. No? These are not just simple laws. These laws say that these are crimes and we should punish those. No? Sasabihin ni Julius mamaya yung penalty.
Ano ang penalty?
Siya kasi
One for child labor.
Para yung mga nanonood dyan, malaman nila ano yung penalty. Sige.
May kodigo ko dito.
Okay,
sige.
Actually, for employers, it's imprisonment na ranging from 6 months to 6 years. Depende sa bigat ng kaso.
For what type of crime is this? Or violation?
Pag ang violation sa number of hours na children should work, tsaka kung gumamit ng bata for advertisements na hindi dapat may bata, tulad ng advertisement ng alak,
alcohol or
advertisement
cigarettes.
ng cigarettes yan.
Oo.
So yun, ang range nun, 50,000 to 300,000 yung fines. But then, when we come to the graver penalties, actually, this is where I introduce the concept of the worst forms of child labor. No? Kasi sa international po, meron tayong mga treaties na pinirmahan na tungkol sa usapin na pambata. No? Tatlong mahalagang tratado yan. Una, yung UN Convention on the Rights of the Child na napaliwanag na kanina ni Roland, no, na ang bata may right to survival, right to protection, right to development, and right to participate. And the second one is the ILO Minimum Age Convention, which defines the child and which also says na, yun nga, no, below 18 years old bata, hindi dapat magtrabaho, pero 15 to 18 allowable in certain conditions. And then we come to the latest convention, which is ILO Convention 182. It's the worst forms of child labor convention, which defines na in 4 specific instances, hindi dapat magtrabaho ang bata. One, katulad ng example natin kanina, yung trafficking and slave-like conditions, bawal yun. Bawal isa ilalim sa forced labor ang bata. Pangalawa, ang bata rin hindi raw dapat pinapasok sa prostitusyon at iba pang uri ng exploitation sexually. Pangatlo, other activities that are illicit or illegal by nature, automatically hindi dapat kasama ang bata niyan, tulad ng pagnanakaw.
Nagbaburn ng DVD na fake or
Oo, baka staff nga, pero taga-burn naman ng fake DVD.
O parang mga, tapos kapag runner ng droga, halimbawa. O kaya sa may bank robbery siya ang lookout. So kasama rin yun. And third, dito papasok yung sinasabi natin na ang bata hindi dapat masubject sa hazardous conditions. No? At yun na nga yun, yung hazardous conditions, pinabanggit natin, masyadong mataas na lugar, masyadong malalim, underwater, mabigat na trabaho, pagbubuhat ng mabigat, pag-cooperate ng mabibigat na makinarya. So ito yung hazardous na dapat dinedefine.
I'm glad you really clarified that. Now we have a couple of questions from our viewers, Roland and Julius. Let's start answering some of them. Of course, with the help of our guests, starting with Alma. We've employed a 15-year-old girl as one of our house help. Our arrangement is that in exchange for the cleaning and other chores, she will go to school to finish high school, and if she remains with us, we will also enroll her to college or a training school like TESDA. Can this be considered as child labor? If it is, are we violating the law? It didn't seem to imply na she was being paid. No? Parang ito yung minention ko kanina, yung parang barter.
Parang in exchange
for education.
Education. Mukhang parang walang usapan na may sweldo.
Actually, in case ni Nina, this is what we dream of what employers should be. Employers who are giving the rights to these children. Right na makapag-aral, right na and I presume may regular day off yan. And I also presume that aside from the tuition fee na binibigay, ay meron yung regular na sweldo.
Okay, so I think we have to clarify
that. We have to clarify that. And I think Nina is one example of an employer who is finding ways to be of help. To be human. These are good employers for me.
But as long as 15 and above yung 15 and above naman.
I assume na 15 and above na yan.
15 yung minention, 15.
And I think Julius is
actually hindi lang child labor law yung mag-apply dito dahil kasambahay, no, kasi may special law, di ba? Di kasambahay law. Now, di kasambahay law is very specific. Ang sahod dapat ng batang manggagawa or ng kasambahay ay in cash. Hindi pwedeng in-kind ang sahod niya kahit pinapaaral pa siya. So, ito, out of the goodness of the heart ng employer, okay, fine, paaralin niya. Pero under the law, kailangan pa rin merong sahod na cash yung batang
So, should they also observe yung minimum wage for the kasambahay?
If they are based in Metro Manila, that's 2,500 pesos.
Okay.
So, that's on top of the study. So, please take note of that, Alma. Our next question is from Nina. The idea of child trafficking and child labor are different at some point. What is the difference between the two? Is there a thin line that differentiates them, or are they intertwined? Kanina, Roland started talking about this already. Child trafficking, tsaka child labor.
Child trafficking and child labor are like twins. No? These are two different persons, but they're joined. Because I'm saying that because kung nag-traffic ka ng isang bata, you might put them into child labor situation. For example, kanina, nag-recruit ka ng bata na pangako mo waitress, tapos magiging kasambahay. Child labor yung kasambahay. That's
trafficking.
That's trafficking. And there will be a higher penalty. No? Kasi sa pagiging kasambahay, mas sa labor, sa working conditions yung tinitingnan eh. Pero pag trafficking kasi, you're punishing that purpose of yours to exploit that person. Because that person was
deceiving and tricking someone to, and then, or maybe forcibly taking someone.
It puts the abuse into a higher notch. It puts the abuse
So
into a higher.
if it is considered child trafficking, if you represent something else, so kunwari, meron kang kinausap ng taga-Visayas, tapos sinabi mo, pag dinala kita sa Manila, kasambahay ka. Tapos pagdating doon, yung pala, papatrabahuhin mo sa factory. That's already child trafficking.
Yes, or for example, nagkasambahay yung pangako mo, and then bumagsak siya halimbawa sa prostitution. No? Which is in the case yung nangyari kay Yolanda, ang daming kinuha na mga bata doon, pangako maging kasambahay, tapos prostitutes yung bagsak. That is a very, very serious crime. And
But can it also, can it also be considered kidnapping in a way?
In a way, trafficking is kidnapping kasi you're taking people against their will, against you're withholding true information from them. Kaya nga yung penalty niya, I have to stress na 1 million, up to 1 million pesos. At saka, seclusion perpetua.
Reclusion perpetua.
And if it's a
20
child,
years, no?
and if it's a child, you cannot bail out of jail.
Then I think Julius,
Non-bailable.
Non-bailable yan.
Non-bailable.
Folks, non-bailable. You have to consider, it's very serious.
Yeah,
to be aware of
meaning pagka na-file pa lang yung kaso, you have to go to jail. Non-bailable. You have to stay in jail kahit hindi ka pa convicted.
I'm sorry,
And
Julius,
was adding something.
Yeah, yun. Sa akin, lahat ng child trafficking ay child labor, pero hindi lahat ng child labor ay child trafficking.
Correct.
Kasi
mas expansive.
Mas masaklaw
malawak
yung definition ng child
Kasi
labor.
pwedeng prostitution, and that's not child labor,
And I
it's
think
prostitution.
kahit kasambahay, if you're employing someone below 15, that's already the prohibited child labor. So pwede ka nang parusahan.
Yung nabanggit ni Roland na 1 million sa RA 9208 yata yun. Pero sa worst forms of child labor, Magna Carta per se, sa 9231, ang imprisonment ay up to, 20 days to 1 year. Tapos, 12 years to 20 years kung child labor per se.
Kung 20 days, medyo mahina yan.
That is for parents pala.
For parents yun.
Yeah, ang parents ay may liability rin kapag ang bata ay sumailalim sa child labor.
Okay. So we have a couple more questions. This time naman from Evangelica. My husband and I are senior citizens. We have a stay-out house help to clean around our house for us. Sometimes we employ teenage boys to do some gardening, such as weeding, especially since my husband and I can no longer bend down. Is what we're doing considered as child labor? Wouldn't working like gardening for us be a better alternative for them, seeing that those children might be involved in rugby or drugs? No? So,
siguro testingin natin. No? I'll just pick up yung term na ginamit niya, sometimes. So I assume hindi siya regular, like for every week they have to report for 1 day and for a number of hours. So yung elemento na sometimes, I think hindi dahil sometimes lang, I think hindi siya child labor.
Hindi siya regular.
Hindi siya regular. At pagka gagamitin din naman natin yung kasambahay law, same thing. Kung hindi naman talaga for a living ginagawa ng bata, occasional lang, then it's not considered a violation of kasambahay law.
Even if the children here are below 15?
Oo.
Pwede yun. Pwede.
Kasi hindi naman siya regular na trabaho.
Okay.
Pero
So
how do you determine regular, Julius? Kasi paano kung MWF, pero 7 hours naman or whole day MWF? How do you determine kung kailan siya regular?
At titignan natin sa punto de vista ng bata, kung nagiging source of living na ng bata yan, then it's definitely an economic activity na. It's not something like yung gusto lang mag-ipon para merong pera
so,
sa
kunwari,
Pasko.
summer job lang
summer
or
job
for the Christmas season. Hindi yun.
Tsaka
Actually, nung high school ako, when I was growing up in Lawag City, I do this, no? Nag-iigib ako para doon sa dalawang matanda na may-ari ng apartment na tinitirhan namin. So, it was for me a way to even socialize with them. And in exchange, hindi nila ako binibigyan ng sweldo. Binibigyan mo ng 20 pesos, 30 pesos, but they gave me access to all their books.
So yun yung talagang plus for you.
I'm saying na sometimes you have to be very human about this, na hindi lang legalistic ng approach, na nakakatulong naman sa mga bata.
Nagbubunot lang ng damo, huwag lang magtatanggal ng dahon sa bubong.
Kasi hazardous na yun.
At saka walang ahas na marami doon.
Walang ahas doon sa...
So pag kayo mga part-time na summers lang, or lalo na ngayon, summer season, so if your kids want to do work just to earn some savings, then you can allow them, even if they're below 15.
Papapintura mo lang yung, let's say, porch mo or whatever, di ba? And then they're 12, 13 years old, pero parang project lang na ma-paint nila, so okay lang yun, di ba? Yeah, so it's not okay for project lang. Alright.
So we'll discuss this more. For now, we'll just have to take another short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages.
Para
Whether they are working as domestic help or in more hazardous conditions, such as in the agriculture or industrial sectors, in the case of children under the Philippine law, every child has basic human rights as stated in Presidential Decree Number 603 or the Child and Youth Welfare Code, including the right to be born, the right to a wholesome family life, to be loved, cared for, understood, and given moral and material security. The right to a well-rounded development of his personality, that he may become a happy, useful, and active member of society. The right to a balanced diet, adequate clothing, sufficient shelter, proper medical attention, and all the basic physical requirements of a healthy and vigorous life. The right to an education. The right to fill opportunities for safe and wholesome recreation and activities. The right to protection against exploitation, improper influences, hazards, and other conditions or circumstances prejudicial to his development. The right to live in a community and society that can offer him an environment free from pernicious influences and conducive to the promotion of his health. The right to grow up as a free individual in an atmosphere of peace, understanding, and tolerance. All of these basic rights are violated by those who employ children to do some form of labor, whether hazardous or not. And these are the rights that the government and non-government organizations are trying to protect through several initiatives for a child labor-free Philippines. You're still tuned in to Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel, with our guest, Julius Cainglet of the Research Communication Networking and Project Development Federation of Free Workers, and Engineer Roland Pasis, member of the Board of Trustees of the Visayan Forum.
Yeah, so right before the break, we were talking about na parang the rule regarding children working is not totally absolute, diba? I mean, children can work, right? Even those below 15, pero as you mentioned earlier, Julius, diba? As long as it's not regular, yung parang naging regular employment nila, and it's yun nga, and for those between 15 to 18, as long as it's not hazardous, pwede sila mag-work. Alright?
And so I think kanina, Roland made a good point na syempre gusto mo rin i-train yung mga kids na wag maging tamad, na siguro matutunan yung value ng pera. So if you have kids and you want them, if you have a family business and you want them to learn how to work, to earn extra savings, then you can employ them even if they're below 15, as long as this is not a regular thing.
Ako yung question ko lang here, you're a child, you're in that age range, no? Or let's say you're below 15, or maybe you're 15 to 18, and you have questions, you feel that you are being exploited, and let's say wala kang adult, what's the best solution for these kids, no? Let's say they can alam naman nila para mag public transportation or to go to the right office. Where should they go? Para sa mga nanonood
dyan. And I'll add to that, Rod, kasi I'm sure kung ikaw naman, if you have a neighbor and you're starting to notice that they're employing, sometimes the age is obvious, that you could tell this child is below 15 and they're kasambahay, regular kasambahay there. How do you report violations?
I mean, what's the right way, or where do we go? Or
there are many contexts kasi that that are in play here. I'll just, point out some. The best context is when the child is in school pa and then she's being forced to work. Then naturally the child can go and report to his teachers na and ask some help. Kasi yan yung second family ng bata normally.
So not necessarily parang a police officer or...
Kung sino yung closest adult. So in the case ng bata na nag-aaral pa, then she can run to her teachers. Kung hindi naman na siya nag-aaral, then normally pag nasa community naman siya, kung merong mga parents groups dyan, merong barangay, na whoever he or she feels na it's safe for her to ask question or even to report, then that's the most important one. That's why it's important for us to educate as many adults as possible. Kasi one of these adults that we educate now will be the lifeline of a child.
Where do these teachers,
barangay,
where do they go naman? Saan sila mag-file ng case? Or where will they file a complaint? Or
depende. Pag usapin...
Kapag ang nature ng trabaho ng bata ay merong formal na employer at merong employer-employee relationship, then pwedeng tumakbo sa Department of Labor and Employment.
Okay. Right.
Ngayon, kung ibang uri ng exploitation, hindi ma-define kung takbo ka sa DSWD. Ngayon, siyempre, ang DSWD, hindi naman sa lahat ng pagkakataon ay magkakaroon siya ng kakayanan na halimbawa, i-raid din yung isang lugar paggawa kung nasaan nandun yung mga bata. So, papasok dyan ng mga pulis at ang NBI.
Kasi minsan, yun nga, 62% of those who are exploited children are in the agricultural sector. So, you're talking about provinces. Minsan walang regional offices ang mga DSWD. I don't know, kung may mga regional offices sila or provincial or city offices, di ba? Yung mga ganun, where do they go? No?
Yeah, actually, nakaganda yung yung CCT, yung conditional cash transfers kasi lumalabas isa sa mga requirements ng mga magulang para continuously maging beneficiary ng program ay panatilihin sa eskwelahan yung kanilang mga anak. So, kahit nasa child labor, nagsimula sa child labor yung bata, napipilitan, nadadagdagan yung oras niya sa edukasyon. Ngayon, dahil sa CCT rin, dumami yung mga ini-employ ng DSWD na nagmo-monitor kung the parents are complying to the conditions set out in the CCT. No? So, indicative, malalaman nila kung maaring through monitoring, makikita nila pati child labor mahagip.
I see.
Okay.
And then on a wider scale, sorry, sisingit ko na. Yung FFW kasi, we're part of the Child Labor Knowledge Sharing System. It's clicks.org.ph. So kapag ka po tayo ay meron natuklasan o meron nakita na child labor incident, then we can go to the website and report what we have seen.
I see.
So meron pong may pamamaraan sa loob ng website para ipadala ito. clkss.org.ph.
Right, okay. Now, we have a couple more questions from our viewers on child labor. Our next question is from Mylene, and she asks, my niece was permitted by her parents to go to Manila as a sari-sari store assistant. She was only 13 at the time. When I went to Manila to make a surprise visit, I saw her not as a store assistant, but as a household help. I asked permission from her bosses to let her come home with me, but they refused. He told me that my niece was still under her complete control and under contract with them. Do I have the right to rescue my niece from her bosses immediately? And what should I do to rescue her?
Okay. In this case, the child is 13. So she can't even be employed in a sari-sari store dapat, diba? So in this case, how can they rescue? How can she rescue the niece? Ayaw pa naman paalisin, no?
Oh, ayaw niya paalisin.
So si Julius bumubulong dito, dapat pakulong niya. Actually, what can she do? Kasi this is related to the question of fraud kanina.
Yeah, bina-violate
kanino ba niya i-report?
Naka-violate na siya pareho sa child labor laws at sa kasambahay law. No, under the kasambahay law, pwedeng magsampa ng reklamo sa DOLE. So, dahil may employer-employee relationship, yung house help, tsaka yun. Pero dahil nga specific condition, below 15 din yung bata, pwedeng tumakbo sa DSWD, pero syempre, para i-rescue, hindi naman kaya ng DSWD mag-isa yan, so kinakailangan ng tulong ng police.
Pwede ba pumunta sa NBI, for example? Sa NBI?
Pag NBI kasi na pag may mga special exploitation na nangyari, halimbawa may rape, may physical abuse, talagang NBI na kagad yan, no? Pero yung case ni Mylene kanina, wala pa namang proof na binubugbog or ina-exploit. I just hope na nung nag-visit siya, ay hindi nagalit yung employer kasi minsan nabubulabog yung situation. But in that case, sana, what you can do is, since minor naman yung bata, pwedeng pumunta sa DSWD, who has the custodial rights. No? Who can say that this is a child underage, then we can take her in na parang magulang. No? Kasi otherwise, yung magulang lang pwedeng kumuha. No? And then, pag nandun, pwede nang mag-interview yung DSWD kung talaga merong mas malalim pang mga problema.
But in this case, it's
DSWD.
already child labor. So it's
Child
a
labor.
clear violation of the law. So
Yeah.
pwede siyang lumapit din si Maylene sa Department of Labor to report
Department of
the
Labor,
incident.
diba? Merong ngayong ginagawang bagong guidelines, hindi pa siya lumalabas, pero it's a guidelines na ganitong mga situation na nagsisimula actually yan sa barangay, and then from the barangay, pumupunta na sa Department of Labor, DSWD, whichever is available. Pero it's a team approach, na mga ganyan. So the more people that knows about it, the better.
Yeah, okay, more agencies. Okay.
And lastly, we have a question from Joanne. I would very much like to get involved with organizations dedicated in stopping child labor in the country. Which organizations can you recommend for me to join? Ako rin, I want to join.
Ako rin, Visayan Forum.
Lalo na nung narinig ko yung story ni Kim and Ina.
No, really, I really got affected by that.
Yeah.
So,
What organization?
What organization na pwede?
Well, siyempre, kung ako po ang tatanungin nyo, uunahin ko ang FFW. No?
What does FFW stand for?
Federation of Free Workers. It's a national trade union center. And we do a lot of advocacy for youth issues, no, young people's issues. So, meron po kaming young free workers. And from our union members, what we do particular to child labor, kasi kami yung una makakita kung may child labor na nagaganap dun sa loob ng workplace. So, we can ask our members to help us in reporting child labor cases para may report yan. So, you can join the Young Free Workers of the FFW.
Okay.
And Roland, I think...
Well, I would naturally say Visayan Forum because I was one. Nag-volunteer din ako sa Visayan Forum nung bata pa kami ni Julius. But, you know, you join an organization which is close to your heart. Malapit din sa yung school or sa yung community because it's more practical. And you join organizations who really provide services. No? Kasi yung mahirap din kasi yung puro advocacy lang eh. No? Kailangan talaga kasi yung pag-join mo, there's a meaning to it and there's action. Otherwise, malulose mo yung interest. So, there are many NGOs around.
I think you can even join DSWD.
DSWD. Actually, maraming NGOs who are providing educational services, nagtitraining sa mga bata, nagka-counseling sa mga abused children. Many. There are many around. You just have to ask.
Those are very helpful tips.
Yeah, very helpful.
So, thank you so much. We'd like to take another short break, but before we do, we'd like to thank our guest, Julius Cainglet, Assistant Vice President of the Research, Communication, Networking, and Project Development Federation of Free Workers, and Engineer Roland Pasis, a member of the Board of Trustees of the Visayan Forum. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Talaga. So stay tuned. Legal Help Desk will return. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel.
Quite interesting topic for today. As I mentioned earlier, a little bit gut-wrenching and heartbreaking.
Yeah, no case study featuring Kim and Ina. I didn't even know this happened. This happens here in the Philippines.
You know, as lawyers, you normally look at it from a legal point of view, but I was really looking at it from the point of view of I guess, a moral point of view. No, it's almost inhuman. What they're doing to.
But I guess the
people.
important points here is, one, if you're employing kasambahays, you can employ kasambahays between the age of 15 to 18, provided you have to comply with certain conditions. One is that bawal sila sa hazardous circumstances. So yung mga dangerous na papaakyatin nyo pa ng bubong, yung mga ganyan, bawal yan. And then you also have to make sure that if they want to study, you give them the opportunity to study. And bawal yung ex-deal na just because you allow them to study and you say na sige, sagot ko na yung tuition mo kasi public school naman or whatever, it doesn't mean na exempted na kayo sa pagbayad ng sweldo. You still have to pay them a cash salary, complying with the minimum wage.
Yeah. So if you are employing, let's say, child laborers, no, I mean, it's not
below 18.
Below 18,
hindi lang
no?
basta bata.
It's not prohibited, but yun nga, you have to, as I mentioned earlier, no, if you have to have a code in a way. You think of the 3 E's. One is that you are not exploiting them. 2, you give them the opportunity to be educated, as Karen mentioned. And 3, you allow them to enjoy as kids. You get them to, they should have that opportunity. Hindi pwedeng, ano. Now, but however, you can employ kids if it's just casual, you give them a project.
Summer, Christmas, if they want to make money. Pero yung kahit MWF pa yan, if it's their source of income, then it is considered as child labor.
And if you know someone who's being exploited na child, no, you can go to either DSWD or sa DOLE, Department of Labor. No, there are, I'm sure, desks there specifically for children who are being exploited. All right. Now, moving on, over the course of this week, we have received several questions from our viewers on topics we have previously discussed. In this segment, we'll try to answer them as a recap of what was discussed. So let's start with Joyce. In my daughter's birth certificate, I registered the father as unknown, quote unquote, because I was not married to her biological father. Recently, I got married to a British national and we intend to take my daughter to the UAE. The problem is the UAE immigration will not give her residence visa because they said that it is not legal or it is illegal not to have a father in the birth certificate. For the purpose of having the biological father's information on the birth certificate, can I just have him acknowledge her but without changing her surname? Okay, so this is a special case. It's not just a question of clerical errors, ano, di ba?
But actually, for her, she doesn't even have to have the father, the biological father, acknowledge the child. Kasi it's not required just to. So one, if UAE does not recognize birth certificates that does not identify the father, you can amend the birth certificate through a special proceedings that you file. Pero you don't have to require the father, the biological father, to recognize the child. You just have to indicate him as the biological father in the birth certificate. Pero hindi na meaning yon na ina-acknowledge niya na anak yun, hindi na
as long as he's the father talaga.
Yes, as long as tama naman siya talaga yung father.
Yeah, so yun lang. If it's usually if it's just a clerical error, you can do that not in a special proceeding na, di ba? There's a faster way to do that, but this is not a clerical error lang. Because it's really filling up a blank information box, no, in the birth certificate. So yeah, it requires a special proceeding. All right.
And lastly, we have a question from Day. I live in a high-rise building that first allows pets. Now they amended the house rules without the consultation of the homeowners. Pets must now be registered for a fee of 500 pesos. They are not allowed on the building's lawn, nor are they allowed to go outside within the building. If they are seen, we would be fined with 300 pesos. Can they do this? What would be the appropriate action for this? So this is actually an issue with the homeowners association or high-rise building, condominium. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing of this is that this is really a private agreement among members of that condominium development. So I think one thing that they have to check is yung condominium corporation ba to? Is this a condominium corporation or is this a co-ownership? Because titignan nyo kung ano yung pinag-agreehan nila na kung meron ba silang bylaws or meron ba kayong condominium corporation rules. Because it's based on that na they have the ability to make rules like this. So kung naayon dun sa condominium rules ninyo na pwedeng yung committee lang ang magde-decide kung pwede yung pets, pwede nilang amend yung rules without consulting the homeowners, tapos na-meet nila yung required votes, then yes, they can do that. So you have to check, kasi baka naman din bawal based on the condominium corporation rules. So you have to check, and you can demand naman to see those types of rules. Kung ayaw nilang bigay, then as a homeowner or a member of this condominium development, then you can demand that they give that to you. And if they do not comply, then you can file a case against them.
Yeah, all right. All right, so that's all the time that we have for tonight. We would like to thank our viewers who sent us their legal questions via social media. Keep sending them on our Facebook and Twitter pages. I'm Attorney Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. To watch previous episodes of Legal Help Desk, you may download the Solar News Channel app on your mobile devices from Google Play and the Apple App Store. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.